Hello, welcome back to another edition of the Lewa Show. It's wonderful to have you join us today. We're here at the beautiful Jackson's Restaurant and Bar, and here today I have some powerful youth joining me on the panel. How are you guys?
Good.
Oh, good.
You look amazing, all of you.
Thank you, so are you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do like these earrings. I'll give a shout out after this. So before we get into the show, I'd like you all to introduce yourselves. Now, I know you guys. I'm such a fan of all your work. I really am, and I've watched your journeys. And I guess Papua New Guinea knows too, but the whole Pacific should know and the whole world should know. So I'd like you to introduce yourselves. Maybe starting with you, David, since you're the only male on the show. Is that all right, ladies?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Lewa. It's an honor to be on the Lewa Show. My name is David Aoneka Lawrence, and I'm 25. The youth advisor with the National Youth Development Authority, and I'm a humanist and a youth advocate.
Powerful humanist. Wow.
Yeah. Instead of saying a human rights activist, it comes out so strong, so I just go by humanist.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Bronwyn?
Okay, my name is Bronwyn Kelly. I'm a youth and women's advocate. So I work a lot in the youth and GBV space. I've been doing it for about 7 years now. So I started when I was 15. So I've worked with different youth organizations and organizations dealing with GBV. I'm also a UN SDG champion.
Wow.
And yeah, that's basically what I do.
I'm just amazed. I'm not really the best host today because my jaw could just drop right to the floor. To you?
Yes, thank you, Lewa, for bringing us on the show to speak about more youth empowerment and things that we are passionate about. I am Leoshi Mercy Kariha, and I'm the reigning Miss Pacific Islands. Most of all, I'm really honored to be the youth advocate for UNICEF Papua New Guinea, and so far I've been working with Bronwyn and other youth across the nation to bring out more awareness on things like taboo issues on menstrual hygiene management, and just recently Youth International Day,
Yes.
which was celebrated with a walk for life with Pulse Park of just this last Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the whole week had activities. I know I was privileged to be at a couple with both David, Bronwyn, and you as well, Leoshina. So thank you all for joining me today. So I've got a few questions for you guys, and I hope you can really answer them with passion, the way that you've come in your journey. And I really believe that everyone should know your stories, and there should really be no holding back today. So my first question, I think we'll start with you, Bronwyn, is that all right? I'm going in random now. We all didn't wake up in the morning and be like, I'm going to be an advocate for this. Something happened in your life that has brought you to this point. Can you share that with us today?
Sure. So for myself, I started when I was 15, so I was around 8th grade, grade 8, yeah, I was in primary school. During that time, I experienced, I come from a family that's, a bit, has its issues. So I was going through a bit of depression. I was a bit suicidal as well during that time. And so my mother didn't know what to do with me. My grades were dropping, and I was really struggling with this issue. And at the time, it got to the point where I had to even see counselors. So I had 2 counselors who were basically trying to help me deal with the issue. But then, and after a couple of months of working closely with them, trying to also, they work with me with my assignments, but at the same time trying to constantly have dialogue with me so that I'm conversing and expressing myself
And opening up
about what I was going through. And eventually, I managed to get through 8th grade, and because you have to do your exams, and that was, I think, the biggest thing during that time was to get me through my exams. That was the first thing. So straight after I completed my exams, I joined. I was told by a friend to go for a workshop. Now the workshop was about peer education. I had never heard about peer education.
Peer as in P-E-R? Peer?
P-E-E-R, like
Yeah.
peers?
Peers,
Like,
yes,
yeah.
okay.
So peer education. So when we went in there, we talked about HIV and AIDS. They were talking about reproductive health, mental health as
Mental
well.
health.
They did address. They talked about life skills. When I say life skills, I mean decision making, critical thinking, problem solving. There's about 10 of them, but just to name a few, and violence against women. So they talked about national issues, but because it's peer education, you have young people who are trained, and then they come and they deliver the knowledge to you at in your language, because you know, as young people we all have our own language. So we have our own slangs, and you know how we converse with each other. There's certain topics like sex.
How we receive it.
Yeah. So like reproductive health or sex, these are very sensitive topics. So menstrual hygiene, these are sensitive topics. It's really hard to converse with adults about it. So that was kind of the idea of the education. So I went through the training, and after a while I realized this is actually what I want to do, you know. I wanted to have impact, but at the same time, my mother is a journalist, and so she used to report on like women's issues, advocacy, that kind of stuff. So like I was inspired also by the people that she used to tell me about that were doing great things in the community. So that's kind of how I got into advocacy in the first place. Yeah.
Wow, so you basically turned a negative in your life into a huge positive, and now you're advocating for such issues. That's a very powerful testimony, Bronwyn, and I can't wait to hear from you, David and Leoshi. We need to take a quick break. We'll be right back on The Lewa Show. You're watching The Lewa Show, and we're shooting from Jackson's Restaurant and Bar, which is part of the Coral Sea Hotels, home of the Miss Pacific Islands pageant, Papua New Guinea 2019. And David, we were just talking about Bronwyn's story of how she became an advocate. Can you share with us how this journey started for you?
Thank you so much, Lewa. I'm trying to think about where to start, actually, because my story is so lengthy, and I believe that my story is so powerful as well. And that's one of my superpowers, I believe that.
Isn't that great? Oh, I love it.
Yes. So my story started from back in the village. So I am from Petlarai of Arma.
You said it right too, guys.
Yeah, I had to say it like how the indigenous people say it, because I speak fluent Arama. So yeah, and the language is called Kiakato. So yes, so growing up in Arama primary school, my teacher came back home asking my mom to teach me how to be normal. So
what is normal though, right?
And to their definition, normal meant to kick the ball with the boys, to play rugby, to do what other boys did. But my interest grew up, being brought up by my mom, my interest was more leaning towards books, because I started reading at the age of 4. And the first book that I read was Haiti and the Cold Mountains. And it had 48 pages with activities at the back, and I can recite the whole book from page 1 to 48.
Well, I can tell you're very eloquent. So.
I love that book.
You do?
Wow. My mom made me after that book. That's my
really?
That's my middle name, Heidi.
Wow. Did you know that, Leoshi?
That's my favorite book. Yes, anyway, so my mom said, well, this is what your teachers say. It's normal. But let me tell you something. And back in the days, sorry, it's not back in the days, but back in the 90s.
Well, I'm not that old.
Okay, let's bring that forward a little bit. Back in the 90s, so my mom took out this, what we call brick game.
Oh, yes, yes.
So on the brick game, we used to play Tetris.
Yes.
And so she explained the game Tetris to me and said, you know how you score is when you build up the blocks? And then once all the blocks are built, at a certain level, yes, you then score. But you get a higher score when you kind of mess up the blocks until it's almost reaching the edge of the screen. Yes. But then when you manage to level all the other uneven blocks, then you get to score more.
Yes.
So she said, in that way, the uneven blocks are you. So you score higher than everyone else. So my mom told me that you must, at the end of the year, you must always aim for number 1. if I came second, she would say, "That's okay. You have to aim for #1 next year."
Oh,
And so,
whoever mom is, we send
and I'd
our
like
big
to
love to you. That is
exactly.
so
I want
beautiful.
to give a shout out to my mom. Thanks, Mom, for raising me the way you did to be the person I am today. Pushing boundaries and breaking glass ceilings. And
That's your story. That's how you became an advocate.
Exactly. Yes. So I kept doing me. I didn't want to be like the other kids. I had to be the way I was, being different. But then being severely bullied, which means that being physically bullied, mentally and emotionally. So I decided to walk out from year 9 after the graduation, taking out the top student award from Kupiana Secondary School. Thank you. And the biggest bully in that school, his last name goes with guys, but I'm not going to mention the first name here. So this person told me that after graduation, when you go back home, don't you ever come back to this school because nobody in this school loves you, nobody in this school likes you. And even if you go back, I'm encouraging you to kill yourself. And even if you die, no one in this school would turn up at your funeral.
Wow.
And that was so hard, but it really hurt me. And I thought that if I go back again the next year, it might be even the worst experience of my life. So I said, it's okay, let me just walk out of school. But then after 2 years, I saw that the students in my same era were in year 11, and I ended up with no qualifications, and I understood that it's a struggle, and especially being raised by a single mother. I thought that how can I give back to my mom because she's invested so much in me. So after 2 attempted suicides, my mom told me, it's not how long you have lived in life, it's how much you have given back. It's not the duration of your life, but it's the donation of your life. So that was a wake-up call for me. So I enrolled myself in FODE, Flexible Open and Distance Education. If you're one who hasn't completed grade 6 or probably 7, 9 or 10, 11, there's an option that you can complete your grade 10, 11 and 12 from FODE, and that's what I did. And I directly went into Open Campus for a program called CTCS, the Certificate in Tertiary and Community Studies that's offered by Open Campus in UPNG. That's where I completed my studies, and then I managed to do my diploma online, and I'm currently looking forward to pursuing my bachelor's degree in business to major in policy. But apart from that, I've also completed 2 fellowships online. That's from the Institute of Economics and Peace on peace building, and the Amnesty International facilitated by the University of Arizona in the US. So that's how my work of advocacy started, because it was that fire that burnt in me. So I joined the same club which Bronwyn made mention of, and it's called Youth and Adolescents Health. It was run under the YWCA ASH project. ASH stands for Adolescents Reproductive Sexual Health. And through that program, I felt like my voice was activated, so I felt the liberty to stand up and talk about individual rights, not just only women's rights, not only girls' rights, but also every human being, despite their disability, their religion, and their sexuality. And as a human being, I believe that being classified politically as person living with disability or someone who's in the LGBTQI doesn't make you less of a human. All human beings are the same, and we have the equal rights. Yes, and that's what I strongly believe in. So, and I'm very open-minded to that, and that's how my advocacy work started. So, I now currently am the lead initiator for this campaign called Men and Boys Too. I know that a lot of people have heard about this and have engaged with me on social media. So hashtag Men and Boys Too is held annually during the 16 days of human rights activism, where it's a safe space for men and boys to come and talk about violence, how it affects them, and to understand the different types of violence and abuses, and also to find out how how can they contribute to society in order to minimize the statistics and also change the mindsets of men and boys in Papua New Guinea.
That's really powerful.
Yes, so that's how my advocacy work started, because it goes back to the experience of being hurt and all through that emotional abuse. And now I'm holding that conversation for men and boys to engage that everyone is born different and it's okay for men to be emotional as well.
Right, fantastic. We're going to have to take a quick break and we'll be right back. You're watching The Lewa Show. Hello, you're watching The Lewa Show and we're shooting from the Jackson's Restaurant and Bar, part of the Coral Sea Hotel's home of the Miss Pacific Islands Pageant 2019. And having said that, we've also got Leoshi Mercy Kariha joining us today, Queen of the Pacific.
Thanks, Lewa.
You look beautiful today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the panel. I'll let you introduce yourself. Really who you are, right? Because we all know her, am I right, Bronwyn and David?
Yes. Of course.
As Miss Pacific Islands pageant. But here today, we're all sharing the same passion. So where did your advocacy journey start?
Thanks, Lewa. I actually started, well, like my brother and sister here today who are also advocating. I've been really inspired by their stories, and I feel that all youth across the nation have their own story to tell. And growing up, I was the shyest person in the class and always insecure about who I could be and my character, if I could be myself in front of everyone and be liked by them. And so I had, luckily, people who could guide me and show me that I could stand up for myself and have a voice. And to me, those people were my two grandmothers, Mercedes Solian and Julie Kariha, and they were the strongest two women in my life. Growing up, they were the ones to carry market things from the market and go and sell for their children to be educated, and also they were the ones who sent my father off to school during crisis. It was just always tough times, and they were the resilient people that I always look up to. And
we can see that resilience in you, Sheena.
Exactly.
And so I just, now being a part of the platform and having this experience, I look back to where I used to take part in debates. And I thank MSTRET for bringing out youth's potential through the debates, so we can be able to speak more and use our voice to help others. But that day that I actually took part in a debate, I believe Jubilee won that year. And
shout out Jubilee.
And it really challenged me because at that time I was studying to become an architect.
Wow.
And I had everything well planned out, and I knew that after high school or after Marinville, I would head straight to Unitech. And I thought that the education that I got and me working hard on my own, not in partnership with other people, but focusing on my studies, would bring me places. But really, from that day where we lost, and I felt the defeat. Wow. And that it wasn't enough to be speaking in a debate, but to start actually doing something about it. And so I thank Vani Nadis and her team and my Marinville teachers who taught us in debates to think further and deeper into issues that we're facing as young people, and not only that, but speak in depth about the political and economic challenges in our country and the region.
Yes.
And from that day, I decided that I found this calling to be a voice for other young people. And I am new in this youth advocacy, but I'm learning from experienced people like Bronwyn and David. And and I can really say that from that time I started, actually I had 3 terms to study social sciences, and my vice head principal at that time told me that, Leoshina, do you realize that you could actually fail and not get into university? And I was willing to take that chance and maybe, take the risk and possibly repeat a year, because I found that passion to help people. And from there, I made it into Divine Word, and it's been really blessing from God, because God knows where you're meant to be and how you're supposed to help people. I wouldn't be able to speak to young people from the grassroots level to even maybe influencing CEOs today that I can meet with because of this platform, and even attract big organizations like UNICEF, who have given me the opportunity to speak, if it wasn't for this calling. And I am just realizing that now that it takes a lot of effort to research behind all of our platforms.
Exactly.
It's not easy to be a youth advocate where you're given a title to actually represent the country's youth. And I also realized that not only do we have the responsibility to be youth advocates, but everyone in the country has that responsibility. Our children aged from 15 to 25, that's the gap for our youth, and we need to all be doing something, because as youth in the city, we can be using social media platforms or technology, but what happens for the ones in rural areas in the village where they're studying to get their goal career, and they find that they maybe can't use their skills properly in that society, which brings us to what Bronwyn and I were discussing, and also David. All the youth across the nation were speaking about transforming education for International Youth Day, where we really need to have a curriculum that is developed by our young people, because I'm not throwing dust on our policy developers or anyone who may be behind our curriculum, but it's a changing age, and it's time for us in Papua New Guinea to do.
That's all right.
It's time for us in Papua New Guinea to start giving our own opinion to how we can build an education system that ensures that when we come out of school, there's opportunities for us, and we're actually ready to face real life and its challenges, instead of holding a paper or degree and being left helpless when we don't have the experience to meet the cuts in work life.
And get into the real world, because it is a different picture. We'll just hold that thought, Leoshina, because we do have one more question to discuss with everybody. I've got so many questions, but we'll have to trim it down somehow, because that is a very good statement you've made. You're watching The Lewa Show. We'll be right back. Hello, you're back on The Lewa Show, and we've had introductions already, which led us to some discussion points. Now, I wanted to go back to David and his mention on your teacher coming home and saying that you were not the normal.
Yes.
That worries me because what kind of environment is that, right? I was bullied in primary school right through high school. All the bullies probably are watching right now, and I think that it's great to be different. There's no other way you can succeed in life, really, honestly. And so I thank everyone that's bullied me because I'm here where I am today because of you. And I wanted to go back to that point. That's a dangerous place to be.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think schools, and not just schools, communities, at homes, there should be safe spaces for children, especially children, because they're vulnerable, they're growing up. We have a responsibility to be protecting like children who are growing up, and it's a lot to put pressure on like the kind of roles or the kind of things you can do because you're female or male or the gender roles that like society places on people. I'm disgusted at the fact that a teacher can come and say you should teach your son how to be normal. What is normal? Right. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different even fingerprint, right? Down. Even twins have different fingerprints. And I think we need to make more emphasis on that. Like schools need to be safe spaces where people are allowed to be unapologetic about who they are, about their passion. It shouldn't be like, you shouldn't put pressure on people to be like, oh, because you're not behaving this way, you're not playing rugby, or because you don't cook or you don't talk a certain way, then like you're not female or you're not male, that shouldn't be it. You should be allowed to grow as you are and explore your potential, your talents, whatever you're passionate about. This should be safe spaces, and I hope that this changes. I hope this is not still happening to other children out there.
It's not normal. Was that hard for you to accept? Did you think that maybe you were not normal? Did that cross your mind?
Never.
Oh, wow.
Never, because if I would have thought that I wasn't normal, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And that's the fact, because I knew that I was normal. I was born to be different. That's me, and I cannot put on a different persona to be somebody else. How I carry myself, how I speak, how I think, and my beliefs and my mindset, I own it. So, and that's fine. That's the individual power that everyone has to understand, that you have the power over your thoughts. And if you construct and your thoughts are like, you have to learn how to pack them in compartments, The negative is shoved down the toilet. This is where I pack my jewelry. So, okay, this is more precious. I put it here. Okay, this thought is empowering. So this is me. This is my identity. And coming back to talking about the enabling environment that we surround ourselves, it's very important because they get to influence our upbringing and our characters and who we are, basically. So growing up, if someone would have told me to let me rephrase that, because growing up in my family, even I had cousins who would call me, say gelly gelly if you're not doing that. These are the labels that you carry around with. Even in school, people would call you a fag because of how you carry yourself. And the person, the pressures that you put on this individual is more, has a more drastic effect than what you put on somebody else. But talking about enabling environment, it all starts from home. It all starts back in the community. It also starts in the institutions as a whole, because at home, we believe that we have to come up with programs so that young people can be better citizens of this country. No, it all starts back from the organization called family, in which you get to impart values, self-respect, tolerance, respect for others. It all starts from there. And when two siblings fight, and I remember Bronwyn saying this before, when we were both on the same panel on human rights, during the Human Rights Film Festival. If a boy hits the girl, they say, "No can fight him, so which means that we allow men to hit women so long as she's your wife. So that's the kind of thought-provoking. that imparting that mindset at a very early age.
Very
So
early
the
age,
boy
yes.
grows up thinking that I can hit a woman
As long as she's
my wife. And that's the reason why we can, it's very hard for us to, push the violence agenda in the country. So that's a basic example of family. In the environment, I already gave an example of my teacher, Kanah, bless him for that. And I would also say that let's acknowledge the flaws, because without these challenges, these challenges actually, we've regarded them as stepping stones rather than being stumbling blocks. And these flaws actually have shaped us to be the people we are today, pushing agendas. So,
That's powerful.
and I'd just like to encourage us on that. And at the institutional level, like the curriculum, Leoshi, you've touched on, education. Our education curriculum has, brought this mindset that young people now work for academic results rather than the skills that they bring to the table.
That was the topic that Leoshina wanted to talk about, which I wanted to go more in depth, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But we just need to wind up right
Sorry.
now. I will be right back. You are watching The Lewa Show. Welcome back to the Lewa Show. Now, David, you were talking about the applicable education for young people now. Did you just want to continue?
Yes, as you were saying, Leoshina, on the policies that are in place that facilitate education. And I think the education environment shouldn't be just where young people go through a test and strive for an academic result rather than gaining skills and experience. And that's what really is the gap we have today as well. Our education system has to be fit for purpose, and it's not tailored according to drill into young people's mindset that when you go to school, these are the skills that you learn so that you can transform the world for tomorrow. Instead of saying, you go to school now, get a degree, pay your bills, look after your mom and dad, and you die after that and get your retirement money. That's not how education is supposed to be. And teachers should be, instead of transmitters of education, they have to be, facilitators of learning. So young people get to learn instead of getting a score. Because someone who has a GPA of 4 may not have the experience and skills in today's world, because there's a mismatch between skills and education. And even though if you become a successful lawyer or a doctor, you can be a broke lawyer or a broke doctor and live on Market Mary's dinner money every fortnight to fortnight, because you haven't developed this skill called discipline, budgeting, and all those soft and essential skills that we are talking about.
Is that what you were saying, Leoshina, the same as what David has just shared on the policies?
Yes, I like what he's saying about having that round development. You have to have the community involved. It's not just the parents' responsibility. Everyone plays a part in giving us that education that we need to be able to be independent in the world. And right now I can be honest and say that the system that we have in education is more strangling us than being able to give us the chance to grow our wings and actually use the skills that give us the skills that we need to be able to life skills. Like actually, when you go out there, you won't be in a classroom in a four-wall box. You'll be out there, and it's a trivia of life. You have to make decisions. You have to have that. You have to have emotional strength and be able to be confident to step out and share your ideas. And we all have our own ideas to share and bring to the plate when trying to build up and develop our country. But how can we, when we're insecure from the test marks that we get and labeling us as failures, when really you can't test someone's true ability through a test
or just one exam,
a project. that they do in class, and that's just a one-off. I can't imagine imagine if that test that I failed in actually impacted me in future, because it didn't.
Correct.
And that failed mark that I got never affected my confidence in speaking in public and being able to do the things that I do today. So I would also like to encourage the policy developers to now see that the youth need to be a part of building the next curriculum that we have in schools, because we are the ones that are actually going through this changing or transforming culture, and we are in the technological age now. It's not enough to develop something that's traditionally used from 100 years back, because what they're learning, what they've learned, our parents learned a decade ago, is not the same as what we need to learn to help us today, and it's not the same as what our children in 10 years,
or 20 or 50.
Yes, 50 years. It's not the same as what they will be learning in future. So it's really important to be able to use the youth and, as much as possible, stop from the mainstream focus on mainstream jobs that we have every day. Like every day I would go to, maybe we visit elementary schools, and you ask them, what do you want to become when you grow older? And it's always the same thing that they'd say.
Doctor,
yes, a doctor, pilot,
lawyer.
But they haven't gotten from that level, say from their parents or from their teachers, haven't told them that there are actually other job opportunities now. So it starts from that level. Is the
and that's
change
not discrediting
in,
doctors, accountants, lawyers. No, those are professions that have been in existence for a long time, and you've got to really be smart to be those in those positions. But not everyone has the opportunity, like you said.
Yeah, and like not every, like I wanted to be a doctor, so I took science in high school, but then when I finished high school, I didn't continue into university, but I went on with advocacy and stuff, and after a while I realized that I actually wanted to pursue something in law and human rights, which is what I was doing. And I think the thing is, a lot of times we impose, like, you choose career paths and you choose the future of these young people and these children, and the sad thing is that you're like, oh, become a doctor, this is what makes you successful, this is what means you actually made it in life. When they come out of high school and they don't make it to the next level, you have a lot of kids who are suicidal. I remember when I finished year 12, a lot of my friends didn't make it into university and they were suicidal. Like, and for me that's sad, because our education system, like I said, it needs to be one that teaches people to be bold and brave and to be resilient, so that when they do fail in one area, failures are part of life.
Failures are great.
They're part of life.
Yeah, you need to fail.
Yes, you need to.
Whereas,
and they need to be taught to be resilient. So when they go through that process, it's going to build you to become something else, and it's not the end.
It's
of
not
everything.
the end. Yes, and education is power. Of course, knowledge is power.
And to like add on to that, like when you look at like jobs, like we were in a discussion recently with ILO, which is the International Labour Organization, and they were saying that jobs that exist now, like some of the jobs that exist in the future are not necessarily like existent now. So people need to also be taught how to learn, not just to become a accountant or whatnot, but taught how to learn, because throughout life they're going to continue to have to learn throughout their careers.
Yeah, and there should really be no end. You're never too old to learn anything, guys.
Exactly.
This has been fantastic. Thank you for having time. And I have another question if you'd like to join me back on the show in a new panel to discuss menstrual hygiene. I know you've done some work on this.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's a topic now that's not taboo, and we should really touch on it for all our rural communities out there to help bring awareness to this topic. So menstrual hygiene. And also, if you want to connect with these people, here are their tags. Leoshina.
Hi, I'm Leoshi Kariha, and you can find me on Leoshi Mercy Kariha blog page or Mercedes Kariha on Facebook.
Bronwyn Kelly, you can find me on my blog page, Warrior Within, and also my Facebook page, which is Bronwyn Heidi Roxanne Kelly. But also for the advocacy and stuff that Leoshina and I do, you can find our UNICEF Menstrual Hygiene Awareness page group on Facebook. Please join the discussions, and also Youth in PNG UNICEF Awareness. Yeah.
Hi, I'm David Aoneka Lawrence. You can follow me on Facebook. That's David Aoneka Lawrence. Aoneka is spelled as Aoneka. And you can also, if you're one who's following podcasts, you can follow my podcast. That's Youth Talk with David Aoneka. Youth Talk is spelled in Tokpisin. That's Y-U-T and space T-O-K with David Aoneka. And you can follow me on Twitter. That's at Aoneka Rupa, Aoneka Ruta.
And I'm your host, Lewa Kanah. We will see you again on another edition of The Lewa Show.